Hey gang, welcome back to Maverick Living. This particular video is not so much about living a full life as a maverick, outside the box, but it's something that's really been on my heart. But I need to share this because I am a member of several Facebook groups that are about dogs. Most of them are Palm Cheese because my little dog is a Palm Chi, and what I see are people sharing how brokenhearted they are when they lose their pet, whether the pet dies at home or they have to have it euthanized or whatever. But the thing of it is, many times, especially for dog lovers, their dogs, their pets become so much a part of their family, and they become really attached, and we love these little rascals, and when they pass, it hurts. It's a grieving process. But as the title suggests, what happens when the dog loses you? And I haven't heard much about that. I did hear a story or read a story about a man, and I'm obviously not, I don't remember who it was, and I'm not going to mention the name, but it was typical. This couple had a daughter, and the daughter had a dog, and they got the dog for the daughter because she had some physical ailment, some illness. I don't remember what it was. Doesn't matter. Um, and so the dog became the little girl's very, very close companion. Not only sort of keeping an eye on her. I guess if something happened to her during the night, the dog would go wake up the parents. So this girl and the dog were very, very closely tied together and loved each other. And the girl was in and out of the hospital several times. And every time the dog would stay in her bed and wait for her to come back. And that happened several times. And every time she came back, and the dog went crazy, wagging his tail and his whole rear end. You know how that goes. And so happy to see her, she was back. And you have to realize or remember that to a dog, you are their whole life. I mean, they depend on us for everything, but they also bond to us. And I've got one right now who I'm in the bedroom on my computer working. She's over by the door sleeping there, so she'll know that if I leave, I got to step over her and wake her up because she wants to be here with Daddy. So, anyway, this little girl went to the hospital one time and never came home. The dog doesn't understand that. The dog just knows that she's gone, and whether the dog feels abandoned or not, but it may feel, certainly feels that its life is gone. I mean, where's the little girl? Where's my companion? Where's the little one I love? And the real issue to me was that later, the man said that when he was grieving, of course, the loss of his daughter, duh, but he said when he would go for a walk, he would take the dog for a walk. And the dog would gladly go along because the dog realized, that he was grieving. This was from the man's perspective. He also said that sometimes the dog would want to go a little further. And he said because he figured the dog knew that he needed to walk a little more, that the man needed to walk a little further, and deal with his grief. And when I read that, I thought, no, 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 wait a minute. The dog is looking for the little girl. The dog will go out every time you open the door or put a leash because the dog wants to know where's my companion, where's my human, or as they say, where's my human. But anyway, the dog was looking for the little girl. And when she wanted to go, the dog wanted to go a little further because it hadn't found her yet. So where can we go? And so it was heartbreaking to me to realize that how blind we can be because we're so caught up in our own grief over the loss of, say, a daughter or family member that we don't realize that our dogs are grieving too. Um, I had that situation. The dog I have right now, I inherited from my previous partner. She raised Shadow for 12 years before I ever came along. And then, Shadow and I bonded, but not as much as her human. And we took her with us everywhere we went. They were incredibly closely bonded. Well, every time Maddie, her owner, her human, would always say, "I'll be back in a little bit," if she just went to the store or whatever. Now we were at one point where we were in a motorhome. We traveled, we park it. Shadow was fine in the motorhome, but when Mama left, Mama always said, "I'll be back in a little bit," even if it was going to be overnight, because we would get in the car then and go, sightseeing somewhere or whatever. And but when we came home, Shadow was just all, tail wagging, happy to see, and so happy that Mama came back home. Well, when we moved to Florida and Maddie was in the hospital a couple times, same situation. She would tell Shadow, "I'll be back in a little bit." And I would take her to the hospital, and admit her. And then she would come back home and Shadow would would be happy to see her. But one time things happened so suddenly, and the EMTs came to the house and asked me to put Shadow in the back room because they couldn't hear on their stethoscopes very well because of Shadow's barking. Because, again, dogs are protective of us, and when strangers come in and they've got this gurney thing and all that, the dog is like, "What the hell?" And it's so Shadow was barking, and I had to put her in the back bedroom. Well, it was emergency enough that they loaded up Maddie and took her out the door, and she never got to say to Shadow, "I'll be back in a little bit." Well, none of that registered with me. I was so busy because, I'm losing the love of my life here, and or at least concerned about her. And it turns out, she got to the hospital, she had 3 heart attacks and, never came back home. So yes, I was grieving the loss of her to the point where I didn't even realize how it affected Shadow. And every time I would take Shadow somewhere, in retrospect, I look back, Shadow was always looking for Maddie. And it finally got to the point where Shadow thought she heard Maddie's voice, and she tried to jump out the window of the car to get to her. And it finally took that to wake me up. That whole story is told in this book. This is a little book I wrote about it. It's Over the Rainbow Bridge and Back, and it's about me and Shadow finding healing from the sudden loss of the love of our life. It tells this whole story and then some, because it's a very unusual experience. I don't imagine most dogs would have the privilege of experiencing what Shadow did, but Shadow was healed of her grief. I'll put the link down below where you can get the book. It's not expensive, but it's a great story. Everybody who reads it just, it's very emotional, particularly if you're a dog lover. But so the thing, though, that I want to say as far as being helpful is, first of all, consider this. But I'm talking to you. If you're a dog owner, you have a pet that you are very, very bonded to. You need to think about what happens when you die. Who takes over your dog? A lot of people put in their will or their whatever that their family can take care of the dog. Well, I think we need to consider, is that the best choice in every case? If the family loves dogs and understands the dog is grieving, that's a good choice. Or if we can educate them, or heck, get this book, put it with your will so the person can read it and understand what dogs go through and what a possible healing procedure would be. But at any rate, we need to think about, like I said, when we lose a dog, we're still here. And, we got to decide where we're going to bury it or cremate it, all this kind of stuff. But if you die, particularly suddenly, the dog is like in La La Land. It doesn't know where you went. And the next person who takes over for that dog needs to understand what the dog is going through, the grieving. I'm sure some of you have heard, some dogs don't make it. They eventually pine away. They quit eating. They don't know what to do, and they just die. That's not necessary, even though it's probably not the worst ending. My dog Shadow, I didn't put this in the book, but my dog Shadow kind of escaped from the house, just kind of on accident, left the door open and it went out to do a pee or do whatever, but was gone for quite a while. And again, I didn't even realize it. And she had headed over to a main street, a 4-lane Boulevard, and she was headed home because that's where she thought Maddie would be. And somebody saw her, some people rounded her up and brought her back to us. But I was like, holy cow, she's just desperately trying to end this abandonment or whatever she was feeling. So it's important that we pass on our pets to someone who is a dog lover. Doesn't have to be your next of kin. Your next of kin, maybe, or your executor, taking care of your estates, your assets, your funeral, all that stuff. But who gets the dog? And a family member may not be the best choice. Maybe a neighbor, somebody else you know. I'd say worst case, sometimes a shelter would even be better, where it could be adopted by someone else, another family who would love them and care for them. A lot of shelters do some research before they just give a dog to somebody, and they want to know the dog, which is another thing. You should write it down, all this stuff about, put it in your will, all the stuff about the dog, what the dog likes, what it eats, what, does it like to go for walks, but at the same time, understand that like Shadow was at the age where she didn't go on walks a whole lot. I mean, wherever Mama went, she'd follow her like a shadow. That's why her name is Shadow. But, when I started taking her on walks, I thought, wow, she's really getting into this, really enjoys this walk. Because I didn't know. She was looking for somebody. And that's why she would walk for miles with her little legs looking for somebody. So, you need to describe your dog and what its personality is and so forth. And you need to be sure and find somebody. And I would suggest more than one, because you never know. That other person may have a change of venue. They may not live at the same address. They could die. They could get sick. They could get where they, We've had a lot of people here in this area who've had to move into apartments, and the apartments do not allow dogs, and so they've had to, give them away, send them to a shelter or whatever. But the first thing they usually do is post on one of the public social media things about, does anybody want a good dog? So I'm just saying, you think about it, because there's a lot of talk about what happens when we lose our pets. But if you can just imagine the heartbreak you have, imagine how our pet feels when they lose you. So I'm just saying that you don't have to be a maverick. This is just common sense. This is just humanity. This is just love. And if you love your pet, make sure they're taken care of after you're gone. Okay? Just like all the rest of your belongings and stuff. Only this dog is a living being who knows how to love and knows how to hurt and knows how to grieve. And it's sad when a dog is almost tormented by that. Because, see, in some ways it's easier for us because we understand death. We understand the person's not coming back. We go to their funeral, they're gone, and we miss them. But to a dog, they don't have a clue. Where'd you go? Did you abandon me? So, it's I'd say in some ways it's more important for the dog or the pet than it is for humans, and we also have people we can turn to who comfort us. We can go to therapy. What does your dog do? In many cases, they pine away and they die. But at the best, they still mourn and are constantly looking for their human. So keep that in mind. And like I said, it'll help more. Like my heart had me write this book about Shadow and I, and what we went through and why. And it's an easy read. See, it's not a thick book, and I think it'll help you. And honestly, like I said, I'm speaking from my heart, the same heart that caused me to write this book. I'm not trying to sell the book. The truth is, I've run across so many people that I've just given them a copy of the book. The book has helped more people, the ones I gave it to, than I think people who bought it. So, I'm not concerned about selling the book. I just want you to get it because I think it'll help you. It also help you understand if you've lost a close loved one, like a mother or father, and you need to kind of want to know where they are and what's going on. So that's the part where, my connection with Maddie. So there's a little bit about that in here too. So anyway, I think the book will help you, but if you don't get the book, at least hear what I'm saying. I'm not pushing the book. I'm pushing the fact that we need to understand what happens when the dog loses you. Okay, have a good day. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because that way you'll be notified whenever there's a new video that comes out. Okay, and you won't have to wonder or you won't miss anything. All right, and if you are interested in the book, the URL or link is coming right up, and you can go there and read about the book, order the book, whatever you want to do. All right.